Let's see if it's time for another in-between missions chat with the whole boat. Hello again. Welcome back, my friend. What can I do for you? When you said this morning casting, what did you mean? Exactly what I said. A casting I made for new locomotive assembly for Kashui. Biometric da. We've already spoken about this. Are you a Shadowrunner? Other work? Or rather, a personal question when you say. We're having a personal conversation. Indeed we are, but even in personal conversation, certain topics can be held off limits. Truth be told, I don't believe that. Tell you what, I'm just going to guess. You're a Shadowrunner. I dislike the term, but yes, I run the shadows. What gave me away? Design consultants live in apartments in Victoria Harbour. You're living in a rusted out boat in Huey. There's got to be a reason for that. You're correct, of course. The residents of shadow communities are usually either too poor to live elsewhere or engage in behaviors too illicit to risk it. I'll admit to being in the latter camp. Designing robots is my passion, but it doesn't always pay the bills. He runs a hand over Cachet's armored chassis, caressing the sculpted metal with his fingertips. My status as a foreigner is proving something of an impediment in this regard. And so, sorry as I may be to see it, the lion's share of my income flows from Kashoi's aptitude for butchery. Such is life, I suppose, what we must do to do what we love. Why not pool our resources together? I don't want to fucking run with a rigger. I have to go back upstairs. Maybe another time I'll strong arm you into my street gang. The Stubbies. Sleepy time? No, let's talk to Duncan. You look different, Phineas. Better, I hope. Sort of. It's like I flipped forward a few chapters instead of turning a page. I mean, you look like you, just not the you I knew. Sounds like song lyrics. Wu chuckles. No more song lyrics for me. I gave up that dream a long time ago. Remember how Lockjaw used to make fun of my singing voice? He smiles. His teeth are perfect. He said I sounded like a frog with a heart on. He shrugs. I thought my voice was distinctive. I mean, I'm no Maria Mercurial, but... So what about you? How are you doing? I'm a little freaked out, because we just recruited a zombie samurai. Same here. I may look like I belong here, but I feel like a complete outsider. Regardless, you're good at running this crew, Phineas, but I still don't completely understand. He picks up an ammo box and begins using it like a dumbbell. What do you get out of being a Shadowrunner? It's about seeing the world how it really is, underneath the veneer. Most people don't want to know how the sausage is made. Shit's fucked up bad. You can see it right there from the outside. No need to look beneath the casing to see what's inside. You're not going to like it. And even if you're the type that needs to know, the type that can't help but look into the abyss, what do you get out of it? Odds are you get nothing but a much shorter lifespan. The trade-off doesn't really seem worth it to me. At the end of the day, what are you? A Shadowrunner. Disposable asset. Sinless. Slithering through the cracks of society, doing jobs that are too dirty for the corpse to do themselves. You don't even appear on a corporate balance sheet. I call my own shots, take the jobs I want. From the Chinese menu that kindly Cheng puts in front of us, yeah. And we can leave any time we want, right? He gives you a lopsided grin. Forget it, doesn't matter. This is about finding out what happened to Raymond. Wu watches you, waiting for you to say something. You thinking about getting chromed up? With cyber? He shakes his head. Oh my god, how many times are you going to ask me that? Oh, at least a couple dozen more times. Wu grins, his teeth are blindingly white. I told you one time I was thinking about it when I was 13. Let it go, I'm not going to pollute my body with that shit. You? I'm a shaman, Wu. We don't tend to go for a lot of cybernetic augmentation. Yeah, I guess you got a point there. That's a good thing, by the way. Better to keep yourself whole and in touch with the world around you. I may not have magic, but I know that's true. What'd you think about that last run? I don't know, Phineas. I've had enough of ghouls for one lifetime. The Barrens were full of them. And remember what the 162s did to that Aslanzer family that lived by the Old Town Center? Remember how we found them? They were keeping secondhand organs in a walk-in freezer. I mean, what did they expect? It's not the kind of thing you forget. Tooth marks in the bones and all that. His face goes white as a sheet. Yeah, it made my stomach turn. Nobody deserves to grow up like that. I don't know, Phineas. I don't think I'll ever get comfortable with it with having a ghoul on our crew. Well, you're going to have to get comfortable with it because you and him are going to be best buds. I guess it was a good thing to help him though. I'd rather have a ghoul on the team than a ghoul obsessed with vengeance. Who knows what he would get to do to get it. Anyway, let's talk about you and me. Yeah, I guess now's as good a time as any. You start. You're not acting like the Duncan Wu I grew up with. What made you decide to become a cop? I needed structure bad. You know that better than anyone. I was already hardcore when we met Mr. Ultraviolence. I'd do anything to get a rise out of the guys I was rolling with, gouging eyes, inverting knees, curb stomping. That shit got me cheers. I was like a pit fighter, bloodletting for the crowd, and I learned to enjoy it. But I never learned how to block out the memories of their screams when I was lying in bed at night. The guilt started to eat me alive, and then I was scared to be alone with my thoughts, so I tried to drown them out with all the things that you drown things out with. You seemed to have it under control when we were together. It's funny how people remember things. Yeah, when we squatted together and later when we were living with Ray, I was still a violent son of a bitch, but basically under control. But that was you, Stubtoe Williams. You were the voice of reason. The brains. Me? The brains? Don't pretend you weren't the leader. You know how it was. When we ran the streets together, I was the muscle and you called the shots. You pointed and I hit. But later, after Ray got me some counseling, I realized that you called the shots so that I wouldn't have to. Because I knew that what I wanted was wrong. By following your lead, I was deflecting my own guilt onto you. I could just knock heads and walk away clean. You know, don't look at me. I'm just doing what I'm told. And then you left. Without you there, I knew that I was in serious trouble. The poster boy for anger management issues. Raymond could provide a stable environment and decent therapist. Money for prescriptions, but you know Raymond. He's an egghead engineer with a philanthropic streak, not a drill sergeant, and a drill sergeant was what I needed. I needed structure and discipline in a way that he couldn't offer me. I needed a cage to keep myself in line. So I found myself a cage made out of rules and procedures and training. Lone Star. Raymond helped me with my application and provided a decent character reference. I got in and it helped a lot. Lone Star got me where I needed to be. Now it's all gone and you're back. Seems like Carter's death hit you pretty hard. Wu continues stretching. Yeah, she was a good one. We were a real team. Joining Lone Star helped me all sorts of important ways, no doubt about it. I really embraced being a cop. I studied my ass off, but no matter how hard I worked, I was never more than a model cop with a brutal streak. There were plenty of assignments that were perfect for a big mean orc like me. Assignments that would have fed my need to hurt people. But I met Carter about a year in and she changed things. She talked about values and goals and priorities and constructing the life you want to live. She was a real trip. She sounds wise. Never thought about that word to say to describe her. Wise. From an outside perspective, I guess you'd say that, but to me she was just grounded. She knew who she was and where she was going and what got her there. Carter understood how the world worked, but compartmentalized it so she could focus on making a life for herself that made sense. She kept me focused. When Raymond asked me to meet him in Hong Kong, I had a feeling I was going to wind up going out the reservation if I didn't bring Carter along. Now she's gone, and here I am. I'll be the brains, you be the muscle. I say that you honor her memory by showing her how much you've learned. I'm sorry, did Phineas Irk just give me sage advice? Sounds like you did some growing up of your own. You've been waiting a long time to ask about the night I left, haven't you? Wu chuckles and hooks his thumbs in his belt. He fucking loves doing that. Yeah, I guess I have. Yeah. It's about what you were doing before you got thrown in that corp facility. You said you had a friend who was in a bind, but that was all you could say. How'd it go? Well, let's just say we're not friends anymore and leave it at that. Whatever you say, Phineas. Do you ever think about when we were kids? He begins moving through some sort of pattern, maybe Tai Chi. I try not to. What are you talking about exactly? The squat and the barons on Leary Way. That least of all. We're not exactly talking about an idyllic youth here, Phineas. Still, it was better than being on the streets. Sleeping in dumpsters, running from ghouls, fighting over scraps. Wu stops moving, drifts off for a moment, and defending your territory. If we hadn't found that place on Leary, found Lockjaw and Doubletray, we probably wouldn't be here. Why were you thinking about that back then? Just thinking about that thing DT used to say. Improvise, adapt, overcome. That's how you beat the street. I remember. I remember Doubletray saying that. It was while we were living between the red hot nukes and the 162s. Crazy-ass dwarf anarchs on one side and flesh-eating ghouls on the other. Those are the days that you long for? Long for? No, I was just thinking that it's the same as now as it was back then. His raspy baritone fills the space between you, bridges it. Survive and watch each other's backs. Yeah, I know. Let's talk later. Yeah, later would be good. Don't get me wrong, catching up is nice, but I'm not used to being as social as this. That's one of the reasons why it was so nice to work under Carter. We both appreciated long silences. Sorry, man. She seemed like good people. It's all good. She's gone and I've accepted that. I guess it's just been a big day is all. Anyway, good talk. I'll catch up with you later. Where the fuck is, our ghoul buddy? Isabel. Isabel is jacked into the octopus. Her body sits inert, her breathing shallow. As you approach, an image blossoms onto the largest of the octopus's view screens. Hello down there. It's good to see you again. She smiles down at you from the monitor, her outlines scintillating with blue-white light. She looks peaceful, at ease. You really feel at home in the Matrix, don't you? You look happy in there. I suppose that I am. It's a comfort thing. As long as I'm jacked in, I can be whoever I want to be. Whatever I want to be. Your picture looks the exact fucking same. Out there in meat space, I usually feel uncomfortable in my own skin. The avatar offers you a lopsided smile. I'd probably just live in here if I could. I've heard about Deckers who've tried it. Never turned out well. Dehydration's a bad way to go. I know, and of course I was joking, but truth be told, I do spend most of my time out there wishing that I were back in here. If you were a Decker, you'd feel the same. It's hard to live in a cage of meat when you know how sweet it feels to leave your body behind. Nice avatar. Isn't it? I've spent months customizing this avatar. She feels more real to me than my own skin. She pauses for a moment considering, then her avatar shimmers forward, filling the screen. A slight frown crosses her face. You know, Stubtoe Williams, I've been thinking about that question you asked me a little while back. The one about the walled city. The one that I dodged. I remember. I wasn't trying to cheat you out of your answer. I want you to know that. It's just that talking about the walled city is problematic for me. I understand. I grew up in the Barrens. I know how hard it can be to talk about this stuff. No, it isn't that. I'm not explaining myself correctly. It isn't that I'm tortured by bad memories or anything like that. The problem is that I can't remember my childhood. The walled city, that entire chapter of my life is nothing but a blur to me. I can give you general information about life on the inside, but the specifics of my own experience are gone. Do you have amnesia? Something like that. The avatar fidgets on the screen. There were a variety of factors in play. The upshot of all this is that there are things I can tell you about, but only a few, and only in bold strokes. Don't expect any personal stories. I couldn't share them even if I wanted to. So if that's okay with you, if you'll be satisfied with trivia and urban legends, then we can talk. Just say the word. Otherwise, well, at least now you know why. Do you know how you lost your memories? I'd rather not go into it. It's personal. Suffice it to say I've never missed them, at least not until now. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm a good listener. Great, I'll keep that in mind. Great. Give me what you can about the walled city. Alright, the avatar licks its lips, nods. I can do that. Isabel's avatar turns, begins to pace on the screen. Where she steps, spiderwebs of light spread across the tiled ground of the octopus's sculpted matrix hub. When I think of the walled city, the thing that stands out the most in my mind is the legends, the mythology of the place. If I hadn't lived with them, I might have found those stories fascinating. The scintillating figure turns to you on the screen. Did you know that the Kowloon walled city is supposed to be cursed? That's what the local believes. Holy shit, everyone's been saying that. Of course I know that. Of course you had ghost stories. Every place has ghost stories. Spirits are real. Not the ones we talked about. Our stories didn't concern city spirits or spirits of men or any other known supernatural phenomenon. We had our own homegrown legends about demons from another place. Imaginary monsters that haunted the walled city. The Yama Kings. Tell me what you can about these Yama Kings. It'd probably be easiest to think of them like urban legends, our own little pantheon of monsters and morality tales to frighten ourselves at night. The stories are still clear in my mind even after everything that happened. Everyone in the walled city believed them. You can get out of the walled city if you make a deal with Fu Mang. Cut the hearts from the 44 people closest to you and bring them to him. He'll reward you with riches. Don't go under that arch, or Quinn Ya will catch you. The avatar grabs at the air, its hands leaving glowing trails as they move. She'll rip out your teeth, tie your tongue in a knot, and make you her slave for eternity. We had Shi Xiang, our own homegrown judge of souls. People would let themselves be flayed alive in hopes that he'd reawaken them in a better life. And then we had Lam V, the Ebony Queen, who'd teach you to hide so well that you'd slowly mutate into a cockroach. The avatar cocks its head, smirking a dismissive gesture. It's all bullshit, of course, but everybody in the walled city believed it. If everyone believed in these things, maybe they're real. She shakes her head. No, they can't be. If they were, the body count in the walled city would be a lot higher. The Alma Kings are just a fiction that my parents and neighbors invented to excuse their own actions. I can't get ahead because the demons are keeping me down. It's almost embarrassingly transparent when you really look at it. Lame V turning people into cockroaches, it's just a Kafka-esque trope layered onto a morality tale. See Shang? He's just Anubis with a different coat of paint. And you know that archway that I mentioned? The one that Kui Yao was supposed to haunt? I knew someone who found it. There was nothing on the other side but concrete. It's all superstitious drivel, Stubtoe Williams. The misery in the walled city isn't the fault of demons or devils. We created it, and we perpetuate it. We blame made-up monsters for our own failings. There's nothing more pathetic than that. It sounds like you're trying to convince me more than you're trying to convince yourself. Or, the other way. I don't need to convince myself of anything. I'm telling you this for your benefit, not mine. Anyway, that's enough for now, huh? I'm sure that gives you plenty to chew on. My obligation to give you an answer is satisfied, I think, so let's talk about something else. Any thoughts on the last run? Nope, sorry. Jacking into the octopus is how I relax after a long day of work. Some people go to sports bars or strip clubs. I do this. As a rule, I don't spoil my leisure time with shop talk, but we're already talking shop. There's a difference between the job and our lives. It's after hours and I don't want to talk about work, so if you'd mind changing the subject, fine, I've got to go. Sure. Where are you? Gobbet looks up from a dented tin of oysters at the sound of your approach. Her rats, madness and folly, scurry from her hips up to her shoulders. Two sets of beady red eyes fix themselves on you. Hey, Seattle oyster? She spears a gray lump of seafood with a fingernail, extends it to you. It smells like low tide at a municipal pier. Sure. You pop a rubbery wad of flesh into your mouth and chew. An explosion of lukewarm brine is your reward. Good, right? Half-repressed memories of dumpster diving in the Barrens dance a merry jig in your brain as the mangled oyster slides down your throat. I've eaten worse. Exactly, right? May not be fine dining, but it's seafood and it isn't made of soy. That makes it good in my book. She tilts back the tin, drains the remaining juice, and then flicks it into the overflowing bin at her side. So what can I do for you? How do you like life here on the Bolt Hole? It's fine, shaping up. Having new roomies is always nice. How are you enjoying your cabin? Comfy enough for you? It isn't half bad, better than some of the places I squatted in back in the Barrens. I've heard stories about the Redmond Barrens. Sounds like a real winner of a place. Kowloon isn't any better, of course, but at least our little slice of home is safe. That's true, it's handy having a mob boss on your side. Yeah, handy. Auntie Cheng is definitely that. She half frowns. Don't know if I'd say she's on our side, though. She's helping us. She pushes back, her voice goes brisk. Look, let's change the subject if you don't mind. I'd rather not think about the old woman right now. You said you'd teach me how to be a better Shadowrunner? Still remember that, do you? I just sort of assumed that you'd laugh that off. Pay up. Okay, how about this? I'll tell you a story about a run gone bad. You tell me what you'd have done in this runner's place, and then we'll compare notes on the answer. How does that sound? Okay. You're the teacher. Right, it sounds good. Of course it does. So that's what we'll do. She sweeps a tangled rope of her hair out of her eyes, back over one pointed ear. After a moment of silent contemplation, she bites her lips and nods. Okay, so this is a story from early in my career. I was part of a team here in HK, but I did some occasional moonlighting for another group based out of Macau. I was a busy kid. Early in your career, so you were like 12? You say that like I couldn't have been. When I was 12, I could have destroyed you. And also I was 16, practically an adult in orc years. We grow up fast. Anyway, the job was a hit on this tower, sort of a trid multiplex / apartment complex. I'm sure they've got them in Seattle too, you know the kind. 7 huge screens, monster concession stand, coffin apartments on top like barnacles on a whale. I used to go to one back in Seattle, best way to watch Urban Brawl. Good, you know what I'm talking about then. Our client wanted us to break into one of the apartments. The story was that an ex of hers, a guy named Boggs, lived there. She'd been cooped up with him until about a week prior, then things went sour in a big way. She wanted us to get back some things that Boggs kept when we kicked her out. Scare the shit out of him, bloody him up a bit, make it look like a robbery, you know the drill. Sounds more like a job for thrill gangers. Yeah, it was pretty bush league gig, but the pay was decent enough, not the sort of thing you'd turn down. So anyway, Sibilance, that was our group leader, had a plan. We knew that we had to go in quiet because the Metroplex had a panic system wired directly to the HKPF. If we got in shooting, we'd be drowning in cops within 10 minutes. Sib thought that we could maybe take advantage of the apartment's terrible soundproofing and kick in Boggs' door when the movie got loud. We'd camp out near his doorway, wait for the ceiling to start raining plaster, and then smash our way in with his neighbors none the wiser. There's no way that would work. I don't know, it might have if things had gone different. But it's what we did, so pipe down and let me tell you the rest of the story. So we just waited in the hall, just like Sibilant's planned. We had a guy in the elevator, another at the stairs, and I was waiting by the floor's communal kitchen. Sib took up a position by the door. She had these cyber legs that she dumped a ton of Nuyen into. Hydraulic jacks, strength enhancements, the works. Girl could probably leg press a dump truck. She pauses for a moment. Come to think of it, most of her plans did involve kicking things. There's something a little sad about that. Hey, I need you to focus. Right, the story. So we heard a boom from downstairs, felt the wall shake with the reverb. Sib wheeled back and gave the door a massive kick just as she'd planned. From where I was standing, I couldn't really see what happened next. I could hear a massive crack as her boot slammed into Duraplast. The door flew off its hinges. Exploded off might have been a more accurate phrase. A second later, we heard an ungodly crash. There was a moment of silence, then Sib let out this little gasp. The apartment was in shambles. It looked like a hurricane had hit it. Everything was trashed. Everything but the door, which was miraculously still in one piece. Remember that this was a coffin apartment. It wasn't much wider than the door to begin with. And Boggs, well, what was left of him was under the door, too. Well, you got rough him up, right? Yeah, unfortunately, he wound up a lot rougher than he was supposed to be. Her nose crinkles in discomfort. That door related a number on him. Ribs sticking out of the skin, that kind of thing. It was a bloody mess. So yeah, Boggs was dead. The stuff that we'd been sent to the apartment to recover had been smashed to bits. And then the building alarm went off. So that's the situation. Our payday's smashed. My temporary teammates are all standing around with stupid looks on their faces. The cops are coming. I'm standing in the kitchen. She plants her hands on her hips, smiling. What would you have done in my place? I'd try to improvise. Was there anything in the kitchen you could use to resolve the situation? Damage control. I'd look for blackmail material to protect myself from a soon-to-be angry client. I'd have rallied them, tried to help them fight their way past the cops. The Hong Kong police with fucking a bunch of 16-year-olds? Cut and run on Shadowrun is a dick move. Damage control. Fair. That isn't what I did, but don't think that it didn't cross my mind. So what did you do? The first thing that popped into my head. That's a lesson to remember, Seattle. The first answer that you come up with is almost always the best one you're going to have, so just roll with it. Don't second guess yourself. Don't hesitate. Just act. You'll live longer that way. As for what I did that night, well, I was standing by a kitchen, remember? I could have cut and run. I looked like any other street kid I'd have blended in, but instead I decided to stay and help my team. When I think a crowded theater, I think a place where you can shout fire because it'll cause a panic. And then I thought, cops don't charge into burning buildings. They'll help people get out of them. And that, as it happened, I had the means to create real, genuine fire sitting right across from me, a pair of industrial ovens. Set the building on fire? I encouraged it to burn, opened the gas vents wide, set the range on a timer, and motored back into the hallway. The others had started arguing amongst themselves. I told them to snap out of it and follow me down to the lobby. We had to clear the hallway before an errant spark took the whole floor out. Unfortunately, the rest of the group wouldn't listen. Sib and the rest of his team were too busy arguing about the relative merits of her let's kick things really hard and see what happens tactical system to want anything to do with me. I shouted back to them that the kitchen was going to explode and continued down the hallway. Just like I planned, I got out of that run in one piece. So did every single one of the people in that multiplex. My fire plane worked beautifully. If the rest of the team had listened to me, they might have gotten into the building too. Kind of a bummer they didn't, but at least the run turned out well for me. Your team burned to death? Look, they screwed themselves over when Sib kicked in that door. They were in a heap of trouble, and what I did would have gotten them out if they had listened to me. Know how I know? Because it got me out. They could have followed me, but instead they chose to argue until they exploded. That's on them. Of course, I couldn't collect any pay because the run had been a disaster, but after the explosion, I got to ride in the front of a fire truck, and they gave me cookies and a blanket. I wound up dating one of those firemen a few weeks later. All things considered, it could have gone a lot worse. She was 16. Gobbet claps her hands together and rubs them, a satisfied look on her face. So, Seattle? The laughter disappears from her voice, and her expression goes serious. It's like somebody flipped a switch. Tell me, what was the moral of this story? What lesson was I trying to convey? Don't go on Shadowruns with it. Go with your gut. That's right. Trust your impulses and don't be afraid to wing it. Almost any action is better than no action at all. Once you've committed to doing something, you've got to follow it through, though. No arguing or hand-wringing. Just do it. If you get caught up in your own head, agonizing over past mistakes, well, don't be surprised if you wind up dead. A kitchen fire can take you down as easily as a cop's bullet if you stand around and let it. Are you sure that they're dead? They weren't with me when I got evacuated with the rest of the moviegoers. I never saw them leave the building, and I haven't heard from them since. I guess it's possible that somebody made it, but I don't really run into those circles anymore. Odds are good that if anybody from that team did survive, they'll have died off by now from sheer incompetence. Shadowrunning is an unforgiving business. You don't get to make too many mistakes. Did that story actually happen? Seattle, I'm hurt. It all went down exactly like I said it did. Well, except for a couple embellishments here and there, but that they make it a better story, artistic license and all that. Gobbet leans back and stifles a yawn. Madness and Folly dart up to her left shoulder and lock their beady eyes on you. Hate to break it to you, kiddo, but I'm beat. It's been a long day. Lesson's over for now. Alright, goodbye. I'll have your next lesson ready and waiting, too. She makes a brushing motion with her fingers. Scurry along now, your mentor needs rest. Well,